so without further ado, let's welcome Will Blackburn, who is ushering in our dystopian future with AI. You got this.
Appreciate it. Awesome. How's everybody doing today? Doing well? We awake? We got some coffee in us. Great. Well, I'm excited to be here today. I wanted to start. What is this, my lanyard?
This is you.
Oh, thank you.
In case someone doesn't know.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Will Blackburn again. That's my name there. I wanted to start with this picture, which is the last Birmingham AI meetup. Who here has heard of Birmingham AI? All right, who's been to a meeting? Let's go. Okay, awesome. Great. I wanted to show this picture for a couple of reasons. One, because just like this group here, it just is an awesome community of people in Birmingham who are really trying to move Birmingham forward. Focus on technology and moving us forward as a city, as a community, and moving our companies forward. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about this for another reason. This meetup had about 150 people attend this event. We've had over 200 people attend other meetups, and it's really blown our mind. I'm one of the co-founders and organizers of this meetup group. It's really just blown our minds how many people show up to this event. One, we chose a good topic. It's AI, of course. Two, we give people pizza. So maybe that's it. That's like the only reason why people show up, and probably so. But another reason is because we're not the first people in Birmingham who are trying to move Birmingham forward. And up on the screen are some OGs of technology in Birmingham, and there's other OGs in this room as well. I've seen you, I've got to know you, and so I just want to say thank you to the OGs of Birmingham who've been pushing over the past 20 plus years to really move Birmingham forward. It makes things like Birmingham AI possible now, and what we see happening with Innovation Depot, all of that, because of you OGs in this room here. So thank you for that. Let's give a round of applause to the OGs of Birmingham. Awesome. So my talk today is on Gen AI. Hey, DevOps, meet Gen AI. My day job, besides co-organizing Birmingham AI, is I'm a co-founder of a tech startup here in Birmingham called DevClarity. We are a software platform for software development leaders. We're helping leaders better manage the individuals that make up their team and solving some of the issues that we see around development fog. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these issues later. But I've got an announcement. Today is our launch day. It's our public launch day at DevClarity. Now anyone can go to our website and start a free trial. I chose to spend launch day with you all, so I just wanted to say that. So let's get into the presentation here. Gen AI and DevOps. Meet Jessica. Jessica is a software developer, and she's been told by her boss that 10x productivity is coming. There's this tech change that's happening that's going to change the face of software development forever. It's going to increase her productivity by 10x. She spent yesterday walking around the office, not really wanting to develop because she just is worried about these changes. She doesn't know what it's going to do to the industry, what it's going to do to her job. Is her company going to need 10 times less the developers that it has today? That night she went home, she tried to sleep, but she tossed and turned in her bed and she couldn't really sleep much. It was finally morning. She got up, she got herself ready. She went to the office, she opened the front door, and there it was, the tech change that's revolutionizing software development. Yes, the year is 1970, I'm sure, as you all followed, and her company was upgrading from punch cards to magnetic tape. Is anybody here programmed on punch cards? Anybody? No one wants to, okay. So punch cards were like the first way that you wrote programs. You actually physically punch these cards, and it would give the instructions to your computer of the program to run. It would have this set of instructions, and it would go through each card, and then that's how it would run. You can see, it's actually like pretty interesting. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's like a sort function that someone's written on the cards up at the top there. And so my boss at my last company went through the computer science program at UAB in the early 80s, and they were still doing punch cards for students and teaching some of that. And he said, like, the most important thing was rubber band your punch cards, because if you drop your punch cards, the whole program's broken. If you don't remember the order of the punch cards, it's broken. But yeah, you know, software development has gone through 10x productivity changes before. This is an example of one where we've gone from punch cards to magnetic tape. So a question that maybe we should ask ourselves is, has this happened before? Have we seen productivity changes like this where people are promising it? Today, you've got a developer like Jonathan who's having some of the same worries around this change that's coming to software. He's spending time walking around the water coolers. He's laying in bed and wondering, like, okay, is this stuff really going to change the world? Is my job going to be here in 2 years? How's this going to impact software development? Oh, look at that font change. Interesting. So, has it ever happened before? I think one question we can start to ask ourselves is, what's different this time than all of these changes before us? Maybe we're talking about punch cards to magnetic tape. Maybe we're talking about going from low-level languages to higher-level programming languages, or the advent of DevOps tooling that makes productivity 10x more efficient and impactful. So I think maybe one of the first ways we can start to put our head around this problem is thinking about this spectrum around asking computers to do something. That's honestly like our job, right? That's what we all do every day, is we ask computers to do something. When we started, we were down at the very bottom end of this spectrum, where we were using very verbose machine language to give it very clear instructions of moving this data from this pointer to this area, all of those things. Next, we had high-level programming come out, and it made it much easier to program, and we were talking in more human language than this machine language, and it became easier to read the code, it became easier to maintain the code, it became easier to test the code. And today, now, we've got this next change up the spectrum, which is now we're just using human language. Now we can prompt AI to write some code that then gets translated eventually into the machine program instructions to execute. So we've moved up this spectrum. So is that really different, or are we just moving forward in a communication standpoint around asking computers to do something? But I think there's probably some skeptics in the room. I'm a skeptic myself because I'm a developer, of course. So maybe it is a little bit different. And so here is this beautiful slide. I spent a lot of time designing this. Up at the top, you see 1 to 10x, okay? That is what a lot of the changes before us have been. We've had some sort of technology, then boom, we make some change, and so now what used to be an output of 1x is now 10x. Now, hey, we don't have to repunch these physical cards when I want to make a change. I can just update the disk. Like, boom, that's just a 10x change. I'm still doing an action. The question I think we're asking, oh, look, I have a laser pointer. Okay, cool. The question we're asking is, are we about to come into a change where we have this 0 to 10x? We're like, hey, I don't do any output, but the computer just knows what to do, and then it produces 10x of what my output is today. That's really the question for us to think about. I don't think that that's where we should spend most of our time, though. I think we should really be spending our time thinking about, like, how can this change help me go from 1 to 20x? When I think about how this is different, I think about, hey, this might be the best chance in history for me to have the biggest impact in my company and my goals and what I want to do, because I can talk to computers and because I understand how this language is working, how this AI is working, how it can help me accomplish my goals. I think we can go from 1 to 20x with AI, and I think that's where we should be focused. So we've talked about what's different with this change. Let's talk about what's the same. The biggest thing to me that's the same is that all of these changes have increased developer impact. If we can write better code faster, if we can do those things, it's an if, then our impact as developers, as DevOps engineers, as SERs, et cetera, is going to increase. There's something human about that, about saying that, hey, our impact is increasing, and all of us in this room here, whatever our company is trying to achieve, our mission, the values, et cetera, we have a bigger impact now because of the change to technology. So we have new tech, it's going to increase impact, but we still need humans. I fully believe that. Why should DevOps care? Okay, we've got Gen AI, why should we care about this? One, we've got to do work, we've got to write code, we've got to write instruction sets, and it can help with that. But more importantly, I would ask the question, when bad code is written, who has to deal with the bad code first? DevOps, not the devs, they just push the code, not the users, they, maybe it's functional for a while, but it's DevOps. Now you have Joey, who has 3 months of experience, and he's pushing 1,200 lines of code a week thanks to Gen AI. What happens to our pipelines? That's what happens to our pipelines. So how do we deal with this? One, let's lean in on the tech. But two, let's not forget to stay engaged with people, remembering that developer and DevOps impact is going to increase. So, part one, the tech. Audience engagement period. This is all of you here now. All right, we're going to do a raise your hand segment. Who here uses AI to code on a day-to-day basis? Day-to-day basis, every single day. All right, so I'm bad at throwing numbers out there. We'll say like 40% maybe? Okay, of you who didn't raise your hands, who uses to code like once a week? Or maybe ask like architecture questions or SRE questions, like any question. Okay, so we have a few more people. Maybe that gets us like to 60% of people are using AI at least once a week for coding in this room. It's a little bit below some stats I'll show in just a second, but close. Those of you who raised your hand, how many of you are only using a web browser to have conversations with Gen AI, such as ChatGPT, Claude, so you're not in your editor, you're just using a browser, okay? And then how many of you are using it in your editor? Okay, so we probably only have 12 people in this room that are using AI in their editor. So I'll give all the rest of you some tips on how to do that well in a second. Okay, last audience question today. Those of you who raised your hands, we're going to start with who's impressed by it, and then your three options for you to know ahead of time. It's going to be impressed, or it's okay, or I think it sucks. So of those options, who is impressed by the output that AI is giving them? Okay, nice. That's a lot of them. Okay. Who just thinks it's like okay, but not that great? Nice. And then who thinks it sucks? Okay, good. We got some sucks people. Awesome. Okay, let's look at the Stack Overflow survey 2024. By the way, did anybody respond to this survey? I'm just always curious. Okay, cool. There's like 5 people in here. Awesome. You can't see the question. It was a bad slide design. The question here was, how many of you are using AI in your coding? So, like I said, I think the room got to about 60%. Boom, 62% this year, 2024, say that they're using AI in coding. Another 14% say, I don't right now, but I plan to soon. Usually this means that their company is not letting them use AI in coding yet. And then about a quarter, 25% say no, and I don't plan to. Those of you who said this sucks, get it out here, I don't want to use this. 25%. Here's the comparison to last year, 2023. Only 44% said that they used it. So boom, we had a huge jump, about 18% increase on who is using AI in coding. And then you see that, like the only other like interesting stat, because of course most people moved from that middle group up into the like, yes, I can use it now. My company gave me Copilot. My company like lets me use ChatGPT on an enterprise account now. You see that about 5% of people moved out of the I don't plan to bucket. So 62% of developers are now using AI in their coding. That is interesting. Secondly, What is your opinion on the code output that you get from AI? 23% here said that they were very favorable. Let's just add those groups together. So that gets us about 71% that say that they are favorable with the output that they get in here. Again, I think that's pretty close to our audience survey here today. I think a good number of people raised their hands that it was favorable, and 18% said they were indifferent. And then you've got close to 10%, a little bit below 10%, that are in the negative answers here, that they don't love the output they're getting. Here's another interesting change we saw over last year. The biggest change in this is the numbers moving down the answers, meaning people got less confident in AI year over year. You went from 27% very favorable only down to 23%. And then interestingly, the unfavorable percentage doubled from 2.7% to about 5.2%. So that's interesting. More people are using AI, of course, and the numbers might move to more of a normal distribution, but that's just still interesting that even after a year, when we've had updates to models, we've had updates to the in-editor plugins, extensions that let you use AI, that this stuff is moving the wrong way. Let's talk about a few examples I've heard in talking with development leaders. The one example I wanted to call out, I talked to a public company CTO back in December of last year, and he said, we will have Gen AI coding rolled out in Q1 2024, and I feel behind. I think I've heard very similar things from a lot of public company, big company leaders. It's clear the bigger the company is, the more that they see that they have to start investigating this and exploring this. There's another company in Birmingham here that most of the companies in Birmingham that I've talked to are using AI. They're in that 60%. They're pushing forward with this. But a lot of them are exploring how to make this more valuable, how to make it more useful, what can they do about it. They're having hackathons. They're having a meeting on a Friday where the developers just get in a room and share best practices and learnings from using Gen AI in coding. So if this is happening, if 62% of developers use AI in their coding, and we think that number is going to increase, what can we do to help our teams use AI well and have it positively impact us as DevOps engineers? Let's go back to the basics. Gen AI is simple from a context standpoint. Yes, there's this black box over here that we don't actually understand what's happening inside. But if you just forget about that, it's actually pretty simple. You've got a model, you give it a prompt plus some context. You can think of those as the same in many cases, but I like to split them up from a mental model standpoint. You have a model, you give them a prompt plus some context, and then you get output. In 2024, the models are good. And we don't have to be worried about this. Yes, it's fun to see the latest models that come out, but if you're using one of the latest models that's available from OpenAI, from Anthropic, et cetera, they're good. You just don't have to be worried about this, so we can check that off. Let's spend time on the two variables that you can actually control too. You can't control the model, but we're good, so let's get rid of that. Let's talk about prompt and context. Here's my top tips around prompting. One, give clear instructions. Don't use comments anymore to prompt your AI code. Who's written a comment that says something like loop 1 through 10, and then it suggests another comment for you, and it doesn't actually write the code, and you're like, oh, son of a gun, no, write the code. And then it keeps giving you comments. It's so frustrating. Again, in this day and age, in 2024, you shouldn't need comments. You should be able to give it clear instructions through some sort of user interface inside your IDE. I didn't even put this on here, but I need to say it to this group based on how many people raise their hands. You should be doing this in your editor. You should 100% be doing this in your editor. It's gonna make it much easier to do it well. Number two, find a way to refer to your design styles in opinionated decisions. Again, this is where we as in the DevOps world can make sure that what's important to us gets passed along the company, so that as software developers, as If it's even down the pipeline, you can give them instructions that help set you up for better success. So think about that. What's nice and maybe kind of obvious is that best practices that we've known for years now in the software development world and in the DevOps world, they work really well with AI. If you do things like single responsibility principle, if you write good code, that's human readable code, etc. You're not asking Gen AI to like parse all these variables that have names that don't make any sense. All of that stuff helps. So if you write good code, Gen AI is going to be better for it. And then too, like going back to the design styles, if you've got code that already exists somewhere in your code base, or if you've got this YAML file or this JSON file, etc., that has like the schema that you want, etc., you can provide that as an example, and it's going to help the Gen AI produce better output. And then lastly, inline prompting is best. Again, get in your editor. Having a conversation with ChatGPT is great at a high level if you just want to like talk about, hey, thinking about this new systems design. I've got some ideas about it, so what should I look for? But then when you're ready to start having code be output, be inside your editor. Very similar or similarly related is context, okay? So we've talked about the prompt, about how you're going to give it instructions and then guide it to do something a certain way. Next is context. Number one, tag the files that are related to what you're doing. If I am, like, let's just say I've got a model view controller set up and I'm thinking about a kind of full stack application for a minute. If I am working on a view and there is a model that's related to it, how can I pass the AI the model schema so that it knows what fields are available, it knows the types of those fields, all of those things. That is what's helpful to the AI. Again, if you've got files, Terraform file, etc., like if you've got instructions, JSON, anything that you can provide the AI, that you can tag the AI to add as context will be very helpful. Similarly, tag docs. If there are docs out there for whatever you're using, especially if you're a younger developer, tag docs directly. Use RAG sparingly. RAG, retrieval augmentation generation. There's, in your editor now, you can likely send the entire code base as context in your prompt. What really happens there is that it performs a RAG experience, and based on the question you ask, it's going to look at the files, decide what files to include in the prompt to the large language model before it generates the output. There are very few scenarios where you should do this. You, as the developer, as the engineer, should know what needs to be passed to the model and just pass that. Don't give it the entire code base to RAG unless you really have no clue about where some issue might be getting introduced. So use it sparingly. This is where my side job is apparently DevRel for cursor.ai. Does anybody here use Cursor? One person. Okay. Yeah. All right. I should be getting a kickback from how much I talk about cursor.ai. I'm not. It's a VS Code skin. It is an AI-enabled editor IDE that just crushes it. It makes everything I just talked about automatic and instant. And so when I see people that are frustrated with the output they're getting from AI, that are frustrated with the quality of it or how long it takes or the conversation they're having in ChatGPT, or they write a comment and it produces another comment and they're like, man, this thing is stupid. It's user error. It's 2024. There's ways to get good output with AI. Cursor.ai makes it easy. So we've talked about a lot of positives. Let's hit a couple dangers on things, move over to the people, and then we'll wrap up. When it goes wrong, what happens? Most of the time, it is harmless. Here's a span class you didn't need. I've hallucinated some class and I've included it in there. That still is not good, and we still need to work to get better and get rid of those, make those easier. But oftentimes it's harmless, but it isn't always. The reason I mention that most of the time it's harmless is because I've seen developers, I've seen engineers who see those harmless hallucinations, etc., and then they put their guard down. They say like, yeah, sometimes it's stupid, sometimes it hallucinates, but again, it's harmless. It isn't always. Here's a story, had a developer, more junior developer, he had AI write a bunch of things, and it outputted that first line there, user.where query. The issue was this was a multi-tenant database that had a ton of different companies' data in there, and it didn't scope that query correctly. It didn't first grab the company and only grab users from that company, grab users from the entire database. And so that's an area where, again, you've got to think like, hey, did I give it the right context to know that this is a multi-tenant database, that users belong to companies, and that we should only be showing users in scope to a company. Think of things like authentication, authorization. Think of things like directly when you're thinking about DevOps and your pipelines. Think about the right way to, or think about the areas where you really need to make sure you get it right, and triple check those. Double check the harmless stuff, but triple check those areas. And on that note, it's still faster when you get good at prompting AI to have AI write code in many cases and double check it than it is to write it yourself. Like, do I still write code? Of course, all the time. But in many cases, it's faster for AI to write a lot of the code first. We've touched on the tech. Let's touch on the people. Again, impact is coming. It's coming through this technology. There's no shortcut to good leadership and good culture. And it's harder in tech. We believe at DevClarity that development fog is this pervasive fog that exists inside of tech companies due to technical nuance, subject matter experts. There's this system over here, and there's this service over here, and this developer worked on this project 5 years ago and then left the company, and no one's touched it since. But if it goes down, everything breaks. It's tough to lead in software. It really is. But if individual impact is growing, it's a fight that's worth fighting. So when we think about scale, oftentimes we're thinking about tech. I would implore you to also think about scaling good management practices. Start with yourself, whatever your role is. Even if you're just an IC, you're an individual contributor, think of like the right way to lead as an IC. Scale those practices, make it easier, make it automatic, save yourself time, and then you'll actually do it. When something's hard and it takes time, you don't do it. Then scale it for your team, and finally, scale it for your company, especially if you are a leader in this room. Go bottom up and top down. Go bottom up, have regular one-on-ones, get feedback, get communication flowing throughout the organization, and then establish a culture of communication. I always love coming to this event. It's only my second time. But you hear so much about the tech, but then you also hear so much about culture. And I think what everyone realizes eventually is that it can't just be the tech. We're people, we're humans, and you've got to get the culture thing right. DevClarity can help on this point. So that is my talk. Impact is growing, tech is growing. Lean into AI, don't shy away from it. And if you want to discuss more about tech and people, I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn and have a conversation with you. But thank you.
I got to give you a yellow card for giving a junior engineer AI and then letting him deploy code. Hey, do we have any questions for Will before we continue? Okay, cool. All right, thank you, Will. Big round of applause, please. All right, next.